Hello, my name is Janice B. Gordon. This is Scale Your Sales podcast. Welcome to the Scale Your Sales podcast, listed number 9 of 42 best podcasts for every sales professional in 2021. I am Janice B. Gordon, the customer growth expert, recommended by LinkedIn as one of 15 innovative sales influencers to follow in 2021. Now, in today's podcast, I wanted to talk about some of the changes to Scale Your Sales podcast. Now, our focus has always been to promote a diversity of views within the sales industry. Now, I don't know about you, I'm a little bit tired about hearing the same voices regurgitated again and again. So I've set it as my own personal task to ensure that I hear from perhaps 50% of the typical, untypical people, but also, like to make sure that I have a 50% of women in sales talking to you, along with a good kind of 20% of ethnically diverse people. Now, the reason why this was so important to me, I'm a Black woman in sales, and I want to hear from more diverse views. And thank you so much for the support that I have had. Now, it's not really hearing from women or diverse people for the sake of it. It's just that in sales, there isn't enough diversity. So I are trying to redress that balance. The discussions that we have are always of a very high quality. So that's going to continue. Now, I've been lucky enough that Scale Your Sales podcast has listed 7 of the 20 top best podcasts in the UK for sales professionals, but it's also listed globally, often in the top 10 across various continents, but particularly in the US, which is the biggest podcast market. So I'm really proud of its 3.5-year track record being listed often in the top 10%, certainly the top 7 of 20 in the UK. Now, again, I'm really privileged that I've been interviewing some incredible guests, some real key people in the industry like Jill Conrath and Laurie Richardson, but also some incredible executives like Zephra Karacha, who's the VP of IBM Securities, Richard Dorio, and so many. I mean, just so many. The list is incredible. And now I want to continue to interview and talk to leaders in the sales industry. But if I didn't change things up a little bit, I really feel that, unless you involve, you're standing still. So I thought, how can I continue to offer value and continue to improve the podcast? And so what I want to do is speak to more people at the coalface, more CEOs and senior executives within industry. So not only VP of sales, but the senior executive team, because all organizations need to be focused as a sales operation. So sales isn't just sitting in the sales camp. It really needs to be part of the DNA of everyone within the organization, which means every executive needs to be focused on revenue generation. What is their contribution to revenue generation? At Scale Your Sales in the framework, we very much focus on customer-centric sales. And you've heard me talk, and a lot of the writing that I do talks about how I believe the sales process is very internally focused and not really fit for purpose. And how we need to be very much more customer-centric. We need to understand our key customers and the journey they go on, which means we need to be plotting it and mapping it. We need to understand the buyer, what experience the buyer wants and how they prefer to buy, and what are the barriers to them purchasing for you, and then almost retrofit that back into the sales operation. So I want to continue to talk about that, because that is very much the principles of Scale Your Sales podcast, which is reimagining revenue growth through customer excellence and sales. Those two aspects are really important. And one way that we do that is around scale. And we talk a lot about this on the podcast. So it's all very well what I believe. I want to hear more from CEOs, CROs, sales leaders, and the like, even COOs, customer relationship officers. I want to know how they are negotiating the recent changes in our industry, and how buyers are really dominating where the sales industry is moving, or forced to move to often. So that's why I'm slightly changing the focus of the podcast and who I'm interviewing. It's great to hear from consultants. It's great to hear from authors and what their thought leadership is. But I'm changing it to hear more from those people in the field, the CEOs, CROs, the sales VPs, and how they're negotiating the changes to the sales industry. So that's the thing that you're going to see that's different from the Scale Your Sales podcast. And I really hope that you're on board to hear from the technology companies, the financial services, media, logistics, all the types of organizations that I'm often find myself working with and talking to. So we're still going to focus on closing the gap in the people, process, and customer growth strategy, because that is really fundamental to Scale Your Sales framework. But hearing more from the great stories that our senior executives are telling in terms of their challenges and how they're overcoming their challenges to building their customer relationships and securing sales revenue and growth in their operations. This is so much aligned to Scale Your Sales and scaling your sales, but I really wanted to bring that to the fore. Scale Your Sales helps operations to close the gap in their growing key customers and accelerating the sales results and increasing value to customer outcomes, giving the business the competitive advantage. But I wonder how CEOs are actually doing that. I've got my views, I'm talking about it a lot all the time, but actually it'd be great to learn more about how the smaller, mid-sized companies are working with larger organizations, and how are they increasing their revenues and their margins. How are they competing in this really challenging environment? How are they retaining and expanding their customers at premium? This is what Scale Your Sales is all about. Creating that long-term lifetime value is most important in developing those partnerships and future deals. So this is what I do day in, day out, but I want to know how the CEOs, how the chief revenue officers and VPs of sales and directors, how they're doing it. Scale is about data-driven evaluation process of the people, processes, and customer growth strategies. And through using this data-driven methodology that I have, it helps to improve sales efficiency and bridge the gap in potential opportunities to revenue growth, or accelerating revenue growth. Now, I still hear from many customers and sales operations that have unproductive sales force, that actually are struggling to recruit sales people, are struggling to close the gap in sales opportunities, and the challenges of sales revenue. I want to hear how that's operating in the field. Why are we having those challenges and how we can close those gaps? I want to hear from some of the successes as well that we're finding in the field. And I made it my job to really find them out and bring them to the fore on the podcast. Now, I love working with small, medium-sized companies to help them to negotiate how to work with larger operations and to build seamless processes that guarantee a continued revenue growth through the buyer, creating great buyer experiences, not only the people, the processes, but the customer revenue, the customer growth strategies that create those revenue. Now, this is exactly what I want to talk more about on Scale Your Sales podcast. So I hope you're going to enjoy these discussions that I have lined up with leading industry experts, and hope you continue to engage with Scale Your Sales podcast for the next 3.5 years. So I hope you're with me on this, in slightly changing the focus to really delve into the industry, what's happening at the coal face, and how CEOs and VPs of sales are negotiating these challenges. So thank you so much for continuing to support Scale Your Sales podcast. Please do look at the back catalogue of incredible interviews of consultants, leading sales influencers, experts, and people in the field. I have so many amazing people that I've interviewed that have shared their experience and their knowledge with you. So there's so much already in the back catalogue, but we are moving forward, as we've always got to be moving forward to Scale Your Sales. So I hope you're with me on the journey as we develop Scale Your Sales podcast. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, Janice B. Gordon. Please do look at scaleyourselves.co.uk/podcast to access all of the past interviews. I look forward to sharing more with you, and I look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.